For months, I have planned to talk with you today about the road ahead, and then once again, disaster struck. And we are reminded that what seemed like solid earth under our feet is shifting. These are uncertain times. 2 years ago, when I was planning another service, the tsunami struck. Lou and I were glued to the internet news sites and email programs, wondering about our Japanese friends. For those of you who are new, we lived there 24 years. And now, in all of our lives, just as we find in Boston right now, there are times when the veil between life and death is torn away. Places we have believed to be safe, like schoolrooms, movie theaters, finish lines of marathons, are suddenly places of death. In Japan, every once in a while, someone reminded us that there was a fault line running very close to our village. 40 years before, an earthquake had destroyed the city about an hour south of us. 4 hours south of us, the Kobe earthquake killed 5,100 people. There was one man in our village who insisted that the mountains around us were slipping. He would say, "Look at those trees. The ones now at the bottom of the mountain, they used to be up on the top." North Korea was our closest neighbor, and when they sent that nuclear missile in the direction of Japan, it hit the water only 100 kilometers from our home. The month I began seminary, in August 2008, an armed man went into the UU Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, and killed adults and children. The minister of that congregation, Chris Bice, also attended Earlham School of Religion, my seminary, and came to talk with us about the shooting. During his talk, he wept. He had been far away at the time, on vacation with his family when he got the news. He cried when he spoke of the man who had died, when he shielded the congregation from the gunman's bullets. I began seminary with the knowledge that being a Unitarian Universalist minister was not a safe choice. In the early 90s, when you hung a rainbow flag on this building, you wondered if there would be retaliation. In this meeting and all through the week, we are at risk to be a target of someone's anger and intolerance. And yet we gather here and dare to feel courage and hope enough to envision the road ahead. This room is a sanctuary, a place of peace, yet it will not shield us from all the dangers that life has to offer. The events of this earth show us over and over again that there is no real way to keep ourselves safe from what might happen. In recent months, our world has experienced threats of terrorism, armed gunmen who go into schools and churches, flu pandemics, natural disasters. And even if we escape all those things, we and all our loved ones are mortal. We will all experience loss. During the beginning of our life together, Lou and I became obsessed with a question. What do we do with rude people? This is not a deep philosophical question, but one that came up over and over again. We would always be in that situation where someone would say something rude, unimaginable, and we wouldn't know what to do. We were very vulnerable at that time in our lives, and rudeness hurt us deeply. once in a restaurant in China, and we often spoke Japanese with each other because then nobody knew what we were saying. There was an American group, and they started to realize we had a relationship with each other, and they said horrible things from the table next to us. And we kept thinking, what do you do with people who are rude? And it wasn't just rude. I mean, that what those people did was rude, but we kept encountering people who were discouraging. They could take the heart out of what we were doing, and they made us feel that life wasn't worth living. They were dangerous to our well-being. Of course, there's the sage advice that I love of Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent," but that didn't help. We didn't understand while we were giving that consent. We didn't understand what was happening. The discouragement that resulted from what people said happened out of sight, not in a place we could change. The inner work we needed to do would take a very, very long time. So we thought up outer solutions. What if we never spoke to strangers? Or we didn't get close to people until we were certain what they were like and we knew they wouldn't say rude things or discouraging things. But what we found was that when we concentrated on keeping the rude people out, we kept the good and kind people out too. Being assertive and having healthy boundaries are important for a happy life. But I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about how fear can shut out the world and make us create our own bomb shelters of the soul. Living is risky. We are standing poised on that mountaintop as the song we sang before I spoke. And we must step ahead. We must take that risk in order to live, not just survive. Church communities can become communal bomb shelters. We hear sometimes of extreme cases of compounds defending themselves to the death. We do not gather in this place to shield ourselves from what is happening in the world. We come to renew the courage and hope that we need as we move out into the greater community. Instead of being a place that shields us, our community, this place, offers hope that we can make a difference in this broken world, that we can make this world more livable. Reverend Chris Bice of that Knoxville congregation also wept when he spoke of the day after the shooting, when more than 1,000 people gathered around the church of all denominations. And they gathered in solidarity and to grieve. He told me that those 1,000 people did not appear by accident. They showed up because he and the congregation instigated and participated in outreach all over the city. Everyone knew that they were that strange liberal church in a very conservative city. Sound familiar? They were also friends. When Christine Hirrell, our adult religious education coordinator, and I attended an interfaith roundtable luncheon in Salt Lake City, many people came up to us and said, "Oh, thank you for being here." When Lou and I go to Turkish Sufi gatherings in Hindu temples, and to the Tabernacle on Temple Square, and to Equality Utah, when I pray at the Utah Senate, when you join with the coalition of religious communities, plant trees by the Jordan River, we are stretching out the arms of this congregation into the greater community. We are making friends that we need to help us survive these uncertain times. I entered this building almost a year ago. I arrived a little early, and it was dark inside, and I couldn't figure out how to operate the lights, and I wasn't sure where the interview was going to take place. It's funny to think of seeing this place for the first time, a place that is now so familiar to me. It's hard to believe that 8 months has passed since we began our shared ministry. When I interviewed with the search committee, they stressed to me that although you wanted a minister, you very much wanted my ministry here to be a shared one. I have tried to do that, and I have appreciated your broad shoulders and open arms in taking some of the burdens that could have been mine alone. When students at Star King Seminary enter their first year as seminary students, Reverend Rebecca Parker has them stand outside, and she uses these words to welcome them to a new life. I encourage you to consider her words as this community embarks on the next years of shared ministry. This is what she says. We are here at this threshold, the threshold of a house of study where minds and hearts are on fire, the threshold of a house of spirit where prayer and contemplation take us deeper, the threshold of a house of hope for greater justice and compassion in the world, the threshold of a house of history that can inform our present lives and link us to a communion that crosses the boundary of death. The threshold of a house of preparation, for the thresholds that will lead others to cross, for the thresholds yet to come, for the thresholds the world stands on, poised now as always, between the possibilities of violence and the possibilities of peace. Come, let us cross this threshold together. As we cross this threshold into the next 30 years, I see that we are crossing into a place that is full of dreams. They are written on the wall as you come into the sanctuary. Please notice as you leave. And down in the social hall. Since many of our dreams are connected with taking care of this earth, with lessening our footprint on this earth, it is fitting that we begin again today, that we cross this threshold as we celebrate Earth Day. After the service, there will be a fair downstairs where you can learn about how we can apply for grants to get solar panels. And even as we begin, we can see progress around us. If you are in doubt of the progress we are making, go visit the annex and see the change. And there will be dances on the second Fridays to fill those awful potholes in our parking lot. They are called the Pave Raves, and you must all come, or at least donate. And we will be working towards paving those holes in our parking lot, for we fear that visitors will fall in, never to return. All of our energy is needed for the road ahead. And if we cross this threshold together, we can make a house of hope, a place where people from the larger community will come for refuge, music, poetry, projects that heal the earth, and a community working towards unconditional love and dance. When we cross the threshold to go out into the community, let us take our hope with us and our hearts and our open arms. Let us create our sanctuary through acts of kindness. Let us make friends that we need to help us survive these uncertain times. These friendships, our links with each other and the greater community, will create the shelter, a true sanctuary for the years ahead. Could these be the treasures that Jesus bade us lay up for ourselves in heaven? For Unitarian Universalists, heaven is a possibility on this earth, in this place, in this moment. May we have the courage to take the risks that we must take in order to make our heaven right here. May it be so.